Hello, dear learners. I once again welcome you all to this MOOC titled Population and Society. In this week, we are discussing the different demographic variables, that is fertility, mortality, and migration. In the previous two videos of this week, we have discussed about the concept of fertility and mortality, factors influencing both fertility rates and mortality rates, and the reason behind the contemporary changes in fertility and mortality rates, etc. We have learned how fertility and mortality rates affect population growth. Along with fertility and mortality, migration too is a determining factor of population size and its changes. It plays a significant role in the demographic scenario of any particular region. Therefore, it is an important aspect of study for the students of demography. In today's video, let us discuss about migration and why and how it impacts population size and its growth. So the objectives of this module are to explain to the learners the meaning and definitions of migration, describe the types of migration, explain the various causes of migration, and to discuss the consequences of migration. So dear learners, let us first discuss the meaning of the term migration. In simple words, migration is defined as mobility, movement of people from one place to another. It is the movement of people from one region or country to another region or country. When a person moves away from his or her place of residence, place of origin to another place and settles in that new place, he or she is called a migrant. Therefore, migration basically refers to movement of people and changing one's place of residence. The United Nations Multilingual Demographic Dictionary defines migration as the form of geographical mobility or spatial mobility between one geographical unit and another, generally involving a change in residence from the place of origin or the place of departure to the place of destination or place of arrival. Such migration is called permanent migration and should be distinguished from other forms of movement which do not involve a permanent change of residence. Thus, from this definition, we can understand that migration implies mobility of a person from his place of birth to a new destination in which he settles, either permanently, which is called permanent migration, or settles temporarily. In case of temporary migration, the migrants do come back to their place of origin or place of residence, original residence at some point of time. So from this we can say that migration can either be permanent or temporary. Another very important aspect of migration is that it can be in the form of individual migration or group migration. In some cases, it may be an individual alone who decides to migrate from his place of origin to a new destination for a variety of reasons, while in some other cases, a large group or an entire village may decide or be compelled to move to a new location. In such cases of group migration, population size and structure is enormously affected. Further, unlike fertility and mortality, which are largely biological factors affecting population growth, migration is determined by socio-economic factors. Socio-economic conditions, political conditions, natural disasters, prevalence of educational and health facilities, so on and so forth, are key determinants of migration. Moreover, people do not have control over birth and fertility or death and fertility, and these are to certain extent determined by biological laws. But migration is determined by social factors and it is largely an individual choice. An individual do not have any choice over his death. And at times birth is also does not depend on individual choice. But migration is a deliberate individual choice. It is an individual who deliberately chooses to migrate due to different socio-economic factors or other compelling factors. From the historical point of view, migration reflects social change. It is because of changes in social conditions that forces or induces people to migrate. One such instance is the Industrial Revolution, which led to huge outmigration from rural to urban areas. During the period of Industrial Revolution, people migrated to cities in search of work in the farms, industries, so on and so forth. Gradually, they began to move from one city to another in search of better employment avenues, and finally people began to move out to better and economically developed countries in search of livelihood opportunities. So during such periods of social changes, one observes large-scale migration of people. In the contemporary times as well, we have witnessed incessant migration of people from rural to urban areas and cities for livelihood. Thus, migration is largely an individual choice made deliberately to prosper in life or to have better living conditions, or both. So, dear learners, with this, we hope you have understood what is migration. Let us now try to understand why is it important to study about migration and its trends and patterns. We have already mentioned that migration is an important determinant of population change. It determines population size, rate of population growth, density of population, so on and so forth. Therefore, study of migration is of utmost importance not only for demographers but also for economists, sociologists, policymakers and planners, public administrators, so on and so forth. Economist studies migration because of its relation to labor supply, employment, occupational structure, so on and so forth. Since migration leads to the changes in economy and the larger society as a whole, migration data and its analysis is important for economic planning and formulation of economic policies. Similarly, for policymakers too, migration is an issue of concern since it has various socio-economic consequences. For example, massive outmigration from rural areas to cities causes problems of housing and sanitation, health and education, etc. in the cities, and to resolve which requires the interventions of policymakers and public administrators. So migration data is important for policymakers and public administrators. Similarly, sociologist also studies the social issues associated with migration and how migration changes the larger social setting, problems faced by migrants in their newer place of destination, so on and so forth. And these studies in turn also help the policymakers. So, dear learners, from this we have understood that since migration determines to a large extent the change in population size, it is very important to study migration and analyze its trends and patterns. Now, migration has different types. So let us understand the different types of migration. So, dear learners, migration can be of different types depending on different factors. So let us learn about them. The first type of migration is immigration and emigration. When people move from one country to another, then for the country in which they have moved to, it will be a case of immigration. For example, in the case of people migrating from Bangladesh to India, it is a case of immigration for India. The people are known as immigrants in India. But the same will be the case of emigration for Bangladesh, because the people from Bangladesh have left their own country and have come to India. In Bangladesh, they will be known as immigrants. Thus, people living their own country are known as immigrants in their country, and they are known as immigrants in the country to which they have migrated to. Similarly, for their place of origin which they have left, it will be a case of emigration, and for the country to which they have migrated to, which is their new place of residence, which is their place of destination, it will be a case of immigration. So we have understood the difference between immigration and emigration. Let us now go to the other types, that is in-migration and out-migration. In-migration and out-migration are internal migrations and are confined within the borders of a particular country only. So unlike immigration and emigration, which involves more than one country and people migrating from one country to another country, in-migration and out-migration on the other hand implies people migrating from one region of a particular country to another region of that same country. For example, people migrating from Kerala to West Bengal will be a case of out-migration for Kerala and in-migration for West Bengal. In case of this example, the migrants who move out of Kerala will be, an out-migration for Kerala, and because they have moved into West Bengal, it will be a case of in-migration for West Bengal. So we have understood what is in-migration and out-migration. Let us now discuss about internal migration and external migration. Migration of people from one region to another of a particular country is known as internal migration. When in the previous example, when we talked about Kerala and West Bengal, when people move from one state to another, one region to another within the same country, it is called internal migration. This type of migration is confined to the borders of a particular country only. On the contrary, when people migrate from one country to another for permanent settlement, it is known as external migration. Now coming to gross and net migration. Gross migration is the total number of persons coming into the country and going out for the country for settlement elsewhere during a particular time period. While the difference between the total number of persons coming to reside in a country and going out of the country for residing elsewhere during a given time period is called as net migration. So apart from these typologies, some scholars also suggest that migration can be in the form of rural to rural migration, rural to urban migration, urban to urban migration, and urban to rural migration based on the area of origin and the place of destination or arrival of the individual migrants. So, dear learners, we have understood that migration is classified into different types depending on the place of origin from which an individual departs and place of destination to which an individual arrives. So, based on this place of origin and place of destination, migration is classified into different types. Now, there are different causes which leads to migration. So, let us discuss them in details. There are innumerable factors which lead or which causes people to migrate from one place to another. We shall classify them into pull and push factors. Now, before discussing these factors, let us first try to understand what does push and pull factor mean. The push factors are those factors which compels people to leave their place of origin and migrate to a new place. And pull factors, on the other hand, are those factors which attract people towards a particular region or a place. So push factors compel people to move out of a particular place, and pull factors are those factors which attract people to come to a particular place. So let us discuss these factors in details. First, we will discuss the push factors. The first push factor which compels people to move out of a particular place is the economic condition. We all know that occupation and income are two very important determinants of a person's condition of life. Therefore, economic condition is a key determinant in migration. People generally migrate when they face lack of economic opportunities in their own place. Lack of opportunities for higher income, scarcity of land, unfavorable condition of land, lack of employment opportunities, etc. compel people to migrate to other regions in search of alternative and better livelihood opportunities. Another push factor is the climatic condition. Climatic factors too play a significant role in migration. Regions affected by natural calamities and disasters often compel people to leave that place and migrate to a safer region. Regions which face rampant earthquakes or flood-prone regions often witness people moving out in large scale to other regions. And these climatic conditions often induce group migration. People move out in a group. Another push factor is political instability. We all know that every individual chooses and prefers to live in a peaceful environment. Any kind of threat to their life and security becomes a provoking factor of migration. People migrate from regions in which they face political conflicts, wars, and other hostile situations that adversely affect the life of people residing there. Therefore, political instability, hostile environment leads to lack of security of life and property of people and thereby compels them or pushes them out of such regions to settle in other peaceful regions. Another push factor which leads to migration is the religious factor, which is also a crucial determinant in migration. Sometimes, in some regions, people face religious conflicts and antagonisms, which may act as a threat to the persons of a particular religious group. In such cases of threat, people migrate from that region. So, religious antagonisms, conflicts, etc. also push people out of particular regions. Then coming to socio-cultural factors like hostility, lack of favorable social conditions for human settlement, etc. also acts as push factors in migration. They also provoke people to move out and settle elsewhere. Lastly, lack of education and health facilities also induce people to move out of particular regions. We all know that there are several areas, regions which are remote and which lack basic health and educational facilities. So people from such regions, they migrate to other regions where they can avail better health facilities, better educational facilities for their children, so on and so forth. So from this discussion, dear learners, we have understood that socio-economic backwardness, environmental hazards, war and conflict, lack of security of life, lack of infrastructural facilities, lack of economic avenues, etc. are some of the important push factors in migration. Any region which suffers from one or more of these problems becomes unfavorable for human settlement and human development and is therefore abandoned. People therefore leave those places and they go and settle elsewhere. So due to these push factors, they migrate from some regions to other regions in search of better living conditions. So dear learners, we have understood about the different push factors. Dear learners, let us now discuss about the pull factors in migration. The first pull factor that attracts migrants to a particular region is the abundant employment opportunities of a particular region. It is often seen that people, especially from regions with high poverty, lack of employment opportunities, etc., migrate to those regions where there are numerous employment opportunities and other avenues for livelihood. Employment opportunity, therefore, is a strong pull factor in migration. Large-scale migration takes place to those regions which are known as industrial hubs and which have abundant employment avenues. Another pull factor is favorable climatic condition. As we have mentioned in our previous discussion that people migrate from places which are prone to natural disasters and environmental hazards. In such cases, the nearby regions which have favorable climatic conditions, which are conducive for human survival, where there it is much prone, and they do not have much natural disasters, so these places becomes the destination for the migrants. Another pull factor is better health, education and communication facilities. So better, all these clubbed together, health, education and communication, overall better infrastructural facility is another strong pull factor which attracts huge number of migrants. Region with good infrastructural facilities in terms of education, health, transport and communication, so on and so forth, becomes the sought after destination or favored destination for the migrants. Another pull factor is the favorable and peaceful living condition. So along with economic needs, educational needs, health facilities, so on and so forth, people also need a peaceful and favorable living condition, because it is very important for the security of life and people. So this is another important factor which pulls people to a particular region. Even if a region is economically strong and has good infrastructural facilities, yet if it is politically unstable and conflict-ridden, people would hardly migrate to such places. So, places where it is there is harmonious living condition, there is political stability, there is no war, there are no situations of conflict. So these becomes a determining factor in migration, and these becomes the factors for which which attracts people to particular regions. So dear learners, we have understood from this discussion that those regions having better employment and livelihood avenues, better educational and health facilities, better living conditions, political stability, so on and so forth, such regions attract migrations from other regions which suffer from one or more of this, suffer from the lack of one or more of these factors. Now, we are all aware that migration has been gradually increasing over the years. According to the International Organization for Migration, there were around 281 million international migrants in the world in 2020, which equates 3.6% of the global population. The International Organization for Migration also states that the estimated number of international migrants has increased in the past 5 decades. The total estimated 281 million people living in a country other than their countries of birth in 2020 was 128 million in 1990 and over 3 times the estimated number in 1970. So if we look back, we will see that there has been tremendous increase globally in the number of total migrant population. In the context of India, as per the World Bank data, the number of internal migrants in India was 450 million as per the 2011 census. This has increased 45% over the 309 million recorded in 2001. So this far exceeds population growth of 18% in 2001 to 2011. So in 2001, the total migrants recorded was 309 million, which came to 450 million in 2011. So there is a huge increase in the number of migrant population. So dear learners, we have understood that migration is gradually increasing, a number of migrants are gradually increasing over the period of time. Let us now try to understand the consequences of migration. As we have discussed above, migration is an important factor of demographic change. Along with fertility and mortality, migration significantly affects the size of population. Further, it also has a great impact on the socio-economic condition of any particular region or country. Therefore, though migration is a demographic event, it has long-term consequences on the socio-economic and cultural development of any country and or region. So let us now discuss the consequences. The first is the social consequences or social effects. Migration, dear learners, has several social consequences. It is a key reason behind the changing family system. In rural areas, there were erstwhile prevalence of joint families, but due to migration of many family members from rural areas to urban areas, joint family system is gradually declining. The status of women has changed in the rural areas. Women now have a greater role to play in the family matters because she is responsible for managing the economic affairs and day-to-day affairs of the family as the menfolk has migrated to the urban areas. So this is the condition of many families in the rural areas where women are in greater charge of maintaining the family. Further, there has also been significant decline in the rigid practices of caste system in the rural areas. Migration to urban areas and exposure to modern ways of life changes the beliefs and attitude of the migrants. They bring with them newer values, attitudes and practices when they come to village, and this has gradually led to the changes in the old customs and rigid practices in rural areas. So the basic institutions, the basic social institutions in India, the caste and the rural joint family have significantly changed over the period of time due to migration. So there are tremendous social impacts of migration. Another social effect is the economic effect. When rural out-migration takes place, that is when people move out from villages to the cities, there is a decrease in population pressure on land. Earlier, prior to migration, these people were all working on their land and as such creating much population pressure on the land. This situation has changed with rural out-migration. Sometimes the situation also becomes such that it is difficult to find daily wage laborers in rural areas today because most of the working age population of that area have migrated to other places. The source of family income has also diversified with the process of migration because as the people, family members, they might move out, they send remittances back home, from the money that they earn by working in the towns and cities. With these remittances, the different household expenditures can be met. The migrants also it is seen that they tend to change the consumption pattern in the villages because when they come home, they bring new ideas and consumer products. This influences the fellow villagers who also get remittances from their family members to go for purchasing modern consumer products like TV, fridge, mobiles, etc. So, there is a tremendous economic change resulted from migration, from people moving out to changing in the labor supply to remittances, changing in the consumption, changes in the consumption pattern, so on and so forth. There is also demographic effect of migration. We have learned that migration changes the size of population in a place of departure as well as in the place of arrival. But along with that, migration also has its impact on the fertility rate too. Studies suggest that when workers migrate to urban areas, they are influenced by urban lifestyle and they do not want to marry at an early age. Further, when the couple migrates and both of them work, they tend to have a small nuclear family with lesser children. Furthermore, in some cases, when only the male person migrates, leaving his wife behind in the village, in such cases also there are less number of children. Therefore, we can say that migration tends to have its influence and impact on fertility rate too. So, dear learners, we have learned that migration has different socio-economic and demographic consequences. However, such consequences are not limited to the place of origin or departure alone. There are severe consequences felt in the place of arrival or destination too. Let us understand the consequences in the place of destination in brief. Migration usually from rural to urban areas. We all know when huge migration takes place to urban areas, it poses severe adverse effects. The first major problem is the growth of slums. Due to adequate housing facilities and acute housing shortage, huge slum areas grow in the urban areas. And these slum areas, they suffer from lack of access to municipal facilities such as clean drinking water, clean toilets, electricity, sewage disposal system, etc. The transport system in the city is also, it is difficult to meet the demands of the growing population. Further, large population also results in greater environmental problems like air and noise pollution, traffic congestion, etc. Apart from these, criminal activities also tend to rise in areas where there is, large-scale migration. So, the migrants, particularly in the informal sector, engaged in the informal sector, they also suffer from lack of proper housing facilities, water supply, hygiene and sanitation, and their living environments are at times not conducive to good health. So, dear learners, with this we have come to the end of today's module, and in this video we have learned about what is migration, who is a migrant, what are the different types of migration, what are the pull and the push factors which causes migration, and what are the different consequences of migration. So with this we end today. In the next module we shall be discussing two very important sources of demographic data, that are census and registration system. So thank you.